Good morning, everybody. It's Tuesday morning, just slightly past 10 a.m. And you know what time it is when it's 10 o'clock on a Tuesday. Yes, it is a brand new episode and a new podcast of Real Talk with Mark Salerno. I am your host, Mark Salerno. Today's topic is very important, and many realtors and brokers, they don't want to talk about it openly. As you may know, my podcasts are straight to the point, unfiltered, and I'm just going to keep it real with you guys. Feel rejuvenated this weekend, and I'm going to tell you why. The last weekend, my sales reps planned a retreat up in Collingwood. So we spent Saturday and Sunday up at the cottage, and honestly, we didn't do much. We hung out, we talked, we played Monopoly, we played some Call of Duty, and it was fun. This year's been tough. With COVID and with the market being on fire, we've been really busy, and this is a good thing, definitely not complaining, but sometimes it's nice to just unwind, relax, and kind of refresh yourself. So you can see here this morning, I feel great. So this podcast is going to be geared towards realtors and sellers. And if you're a realtor listening to this podcast, then you know that selling a home isn't as smooth process as everybody may perceive it. It involves a lot of behind the scenes work, from negotiating to finding the right property, to staging, to creating marketing materials, and finally closing the deal, and much more. Regardless of the hard work that is put into the process, as a realtor, you have to deal with many different types of clients. Some clients that are easier to work with, and some clients that maybe not so much. It's a little bit more challenging. However, I do deeply appreciate working with all of my clients, and that's the best part. If every client was the same, I probably wouldn't enjoy my job as much. But when you're dealing with different clients and different situations, it keeps things fresh, it keeps things exciting, and it keeps you motivated to do better. So I wanted to talk about this topic for a while because as a realtor, we always get these hurdles that we deal with. And the hurdle is always our expectation versus our client's expectation. And sometimes it's hard to kind of get that common ground in the middle. So this episode is going to cover all of those scenarios. I'm going to give you guys some examples of what I've personally dealt with. And I hope that this helps you as sellers maybe become a little bit more realistic and listen to your realtor. And I hope this helps realtors understand how to deal with a client and getting expectation levels on where they need to be. Emotions, emotional feelings. These are all things that go into a buy or a sell, especially if it's not an investment property. When you're dealing with an investment property or a commercial property, it's numbers. What's my ROI? What am I ending up with in my pocket? And does it make sense? People keep tons of emotions and memories attached to a home that they have lived in. And selling it, it's not always the easiest thing to do. Some people grew up and spent their entire lives in a home. It may be a family member that had this property forever and now it's been passed down to you. And people who are in this position are going to have a different emotional attachment to a property. And as a realtor, guys, listen clearly, open up those ears. You must understand and be sensitive to this part of the business. And I need you to understand and think about building trust and transparency with your clients. It's crucial. This is a very big decision for somebody. So you need to make sure that you understand that emotional part of the transaction. Sellers have different levels of attachments to their homes and different perspectives on how their homes will sell in a particular market. Most people, they overevaluate their homes and believe that their homes are worth more than what they are. We see this every day and it will never change. I think that mine's better than yours and I think that mine's the best. That's the mentality that every seller has. So they tend to view the pros of their homes as overconfident, and they take the cons and take them a little bit too lightly. So because of this reason, a lot of home sellers overevaluate their properties. If sellers are stubborn, it can become challenging to give them a reality check. And when it comes to the home and what it should be worth, and our professional advice needs to be taken seriously. At times, clients can be stubborn, or they might be at a certain price point that they think that they are going to get for a home, and they attempt to negotiate with us on the price when really we should be negotiating and putting that property in a position to sell for the market. As a realtor, We want to sell your home for as much money as possible. So it's not that we want to come to people and say, well, you need to lower your expectations or lower your price. And we don't want people to take that as a personal insult. It's very important to understand and define how you approach these situations, okay? It's normal for a home seller to feel this way. However, it can sometimes create a disconnect between the realtor and the seller. And I'm here to discuss on how sellers' expectations and greed can affect the listing price of a property and ultimately the outcome of a sale of a home. As realtors, our focus is to provide exceptional expert advice after carefully analyzing the value of a property, okay? Now, analyzing a property is gonna have many different factors into what we think a home is worth. The area, the current market, the way that we see the selling price, and other homes sold in the area will also be factors when we're coming up with this list price. The last thing that we want to do is have a home that sits on the market for months and simply becomes, oh, that house is overpriced. Let's wait till the price drops on it. It's our job to explain as much as possible and make sure that the clients understand the true value of their home. It's nice to fluff somebody's pillow and tell them you can get up here, and then when it comes to game, you can't perform and you look like a goof because you told them a price there. So it's very, very, very simple for people, okay? It becomes a very difficult situation when you are not the realtor who's gonna give the realistic expectations. At times, there's only so much that we can do to explain to our clients. Therefore, we end up listing a home for maybe more than it's worth, and then all of a sudden, yeah, you're just sitting on the market. Realtors, I want to ask you something. How many times has this happened to you in the past? If you're a realtor who's been selling real estate for many years, or maybe even if you're just new to the business, anyone who's ever had a listing is going to go through this, okay? So think about it right now. Raise your hand if you're that realtor who's been in this position. If you haven't, you just haven't been selling real estate long enough, or you're just not selling any real estate at all. I'm gonna give you guys an example, and I think this is more apparent for the luxury sector when you're talking about multi-million-dollar homes. Sometimes, someone could think a house is worth $2 million and it sells for 2.2, or they think that it's worth 2.2 and it sells for 1.9. There's going to be a lot of flexibility and variances, let's call it, on a luxury home. I'm going to give you guys an example, though, of a situation I was in where I quoted a price and we went a different way and listed it as for the seller's expectations. Now, before even dipping into that, I need to let you guys know it's very important to always give your professional opinion day one. And when I say day one, when you're sitting at the table trying to get the listing. I think most realtors are hesitant to give their exact valuation on a home because they're gonna sit there and say, well, what if another agent tells them they can get more money? I'm gonna lose the listing, right? But these are the things you need to look at when you're doing something. When you give a homeowner a price that you feel confident in, if they list with you, odds are you're gonna end up selling that property. You don't want to be put in a position where you took the client's advice on what they thought and maybe it was 10% then higher than what you valued the home at. Because all that's going to end up happening at that point is you're going to list a property, you're going to spend money, you're going to waste money, you're going to waste time, you're going to get aggravation, and on top of it, you're going to end up losing that listing at the end of it, and realtor B is going to come in and price the property at a less price because the homeowners have exhausted themselves at that. And even though it wasn't your fault, you're going to lose the listing because most sellers are going to say, well, it was my realtor who couldn't sell it. Meanwhile, they came up with the price. Now, it's not about dealing with difficult people. Rather, it's about simply not understanding and knowing how the market works. Some people may sell their homes, a few times in their lifetimes, and then there's some people who haven't sold a home in 30 years. And as we all know, the real estate market has changed drastically from the way we market properties to the information that people have. And when I say people, I talk about the public. The public has more information today than they ever have. If you even go back maybe 5 years ago, if somebody wanted to know what a house sold for, they had to call their realtor. Today, they can go online, type in an address or do a map search and see all the sales history. So what I'm saying is people are way more informed today. You're not going to pull the rug over somebody. People know what pricing is. But as a realtor, you need to understand, price properly, and then it's our job to sell and make people, understand the true value of a home, because some people are always going to downplay. For example, a house sells for a certain price point that was not market value. It looked like it was less than what it could have been. There's multiple factors that you have to take into that. So we're not going to sit here and just rely on one last sale. We need to look at the market as a whole. And as a realtor, you need to be confident in what you're selling. That's the most important factor to this, because if I have confidence and a buyer comes into a property and says, well, I think your price is too high, but I know that the price is correct, people will see that you're not just trying to be a sleazy salesman pitching a house to make a sale. You can sit there with confidence to say, guys, look, I'm the professional. You can see from my track record that I sell homes, and there's a reason why I get hired to sell these properties. So even though your valuation of the property is X, I respectfully understand that, but these are the reasons why the property is worth Y. Believe me, this happens more than you think, and it's very important to be in that confidence position. Most people that are coming in off the street, or sellers in general, they're not realtors, and that's why they hire us to be the professional to guide them. And when you don't guide them down that right path and maybe give false information in hopes of just getting a listing, again, to fluff the seller's pillow to get that listing, it's gonna end bad. And believe me, it happens more than you think. I see it all the time. Some of these things can be avoided beforehand through clear communication with your clients before signing the contract. If you and your client are not on the same page in the beginning, then I'm going to tell you right now, this is going to result in a miscommunication and unrealistic seller expectations later on. That'll literally put you behind the 8 ball. It's going to put you in an uncomfortable situation, and ultimately it may result in you losing the job, and again, depending on who you're selling for, it may cost a relationship. This is something people need to look at, and I see it all the time. We sell home for family members, we sell home for friends. I've personally seen relationships go downhill over real estate transactions, and honestly, it's not fun. So the more upfront and honest and confident you are from the beginning without the sugarcoating is gonna put these situations to rest, because ultimately at the end of the day, we are gonna listen to our clients. Our clients are the ones who make the final decisions. I'm never the realtor who, metaphorically is putting a gun to a seller's head to say, you have to sell the price for this. It's a great offer. If you don't take it, I'm done with you. No, a seller has the option to decline any offer at the end of the day. But if you've already set the groundwork for it at the beginning, you're gonna have smooth sailing, and it's just gonna make for a very comfortable sale and situation. Now let's talk about this price change situation, or laying the groundwork for why you feel a property is worth what it's worth, okay? Sometimes sellers can take negative feedback out of context, and they simply take it personally. In short, they believe that they know more about real estate than the realtors know, okay? It's just simply put. Sellers want to be in a place where they get a premium price for their home and they sell it very fast, but sometimes that pricing is just simply not realistic. In some cases, we are, in a position where we're able to market a property with all the strategies that we have. We have great social media presence. We can have great everything. But if the price is not reflective of what the market thinks it is, we won't sell the home. And look, personally speaking, from our level, I can tell you that we have an average sales ratio of 4.27% higher than the average realtor. And these are for stats based on MLS through 2020. So yes, we can sell a home for maybe more than the average Joe, but I can't flip a property 10%. It's just sometimes at a certain point, it's not realistic expectations, but those who are exceptional at their job are able to achieve greater values. And that's why there's always certain realtors who are in the top of their class. Like any other business, whether it's in sports or it's in car sales, you're always gonna have an elite class. And when you're dealing with an elite class, there's a reason why they're there. It's a trust thing. People that come to a realtor and trust them to sell their home and listen to them are always going to get the most effective rate of return, if you want to call it. Sometimes when sellers are greedy and you're bringing great offers to the table, you can only advise them to say, look, you hired me because I'm a pro, this is why you're paying me to sell your house, but they don't listen. And sometimes these greedy sellers can be tough to convince to accept an exceptionally good offer, especially when they're hoping for, a better offer to come. But we need to be realistic, okay? If your home is overpriced and it's been on the market for 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months and you haven't got an offer, The only thing that's left to do is to change the price, okay? You should take an offer that a realtor tells you, to take, because they have the best interest for you, in most cases at least. And again, when you're dealing with agents who do a lot of transactions, there's a reason for them doing these transactions. They lead their clients in the better direction and the way that they need to be. Someone that's going to tell you, this is a great offer, but maybe you shouldn't take it, because they're thinking in the back of their mind that, oh my God, I know my client, for example, wants $2 million, but I got 1.9, but I think the house is worth 1.850. You have to put your foot down and advise them to say, guys, look, if you can't take this kind of an offer, I don't think I can get it for you again. Maybe you're going to want to walk away from that deal. Listen, the reality is, at the end of the day, greedy sellers are always looking for more. Maybe a better offer will come through, but in my experience, I like to trust my gut, and my gut has got me to where we are today in our business level. And I want to give you guys an example. Now, this was a situation where it was a subdivision home that was heavily upgraded. It was almost custom inside. And if it didn't have these custom finishes, this house probably would have been worth $165,000 to $170,000. However, when we sat down, it was right at the beginning of COVID. I was pitching my listing presentation, and I said, I think the house is worth somewhere in the upper 1.8s. That's where I would value this home today. Now, the client said, I want $2 million for this house. I sat there and I really believed that the house wasn't worth $2 million bucks. And I expressed that with them. And like most realtors, you're afraid to say that to the clients, because you're going to be like, oh, somebody else is going to take the listing at $2 million. I told my clients, look, guys, I'm ready to work with you. I do preach that I feel I'm one of the best in the business, and if there's anybody who's going to get more money for you, it's me. Let's try it out, but with the understanding that I did tell you what I think the property is worth, because giving that true explanation for what you feel it's worth will avoid your sellers coming back to you. If you have to ask for a price change, it'll avoid them coming back and saying, well, Mark, why didn't you tell me this is what you felt the house was worth when you listed it? Okay, so we've eliminated that because we told them what the price is worth. So getting back to the story, I listed the property at $1,988,000. We were on the market for 4 months. We did not get a single offer. Like, I'm talking like not even one. There was talks, but nothing came in. I sat with my clients. I said, guys, look, I tried for you. See, I've done everything in my power to sell this home for the $2 million that you wanted. I need a price change. You got to give it to me. Give it to me at under 1.9. I don't care what the number is, as long as I don't have a 9 in it. Give it to me at the 8 level. I said, this is not me coming back to you asking for a price change because I made a mistake on pricing. I gave you my valuation back in March. We're sitting here in July now. Finally, the seller said, Mark, you know what? Do what you got to do. So I did. I reduced the price to $1,899,000. We sold this property in, I think it was 2 or 3 days, for $1,885,000. Now you're probably all sitting there saying, well, why didn't that person offer that price when you were at just under $2 million? It's only 5%. And honestly, that's a legitimate question to ask me. The reality is, people were sitting there saying, it's not worth $2 million, so I'm gonna wait for it to drop. The second that it got to a trigger number, the market reacted. One thing people need to understand, especially in a very active, hot market, the market will always speak. Our job as realtors is to position the property in the best spot possible. So between pricing, marketing, exposure that you're giving to the home to give it a chance to sell. If something's worth $2 million, it'll get $2 million or maybe more, depending on if more people come to the table. But pricing is everything, guys. Please do not make this mistake. Sellers and realtors alike, work with one another and make sure that you get that price where you need it. Going back to this story very quickly to end off on it, this could have been a detrimental thing for my clients. And when I say that, we could have got, for example, the high 1.8s when we came out. Typically speaking, when a property is sitting on the market for that long and there's only a reduction of 5% more or less, people might say, hey, well, okay, you did not sell it at 1,988. Now you're at 1,899. You probably are worth 1.8 or maybe 1.85. So we were, I don't want to say lucky to get that money because this was an exceptional property, but I'd say maybe 7 out of 10 times, if you go down that path, you're not going to get that first quoted number, because coming to the market and exposing yourself for that long makes the house look stale, simply put. The reality is homeowners are always going to have a fixed price in their mind that they're not willing to negotiate down below. It happens way more often than you guys can think, okay? It's easy to presume that you will have a better deal, but it doesn't always work that way. You have to avoid being viewed as a greedy home seller by creating realistic pricing strategies. Creating a pricing strategy is an art. It's a science. When selling a home, you have to determine the list price. There are many factors to consider besides recent neighborhood sales, such as the condition of your home, sales trends, mortgage interest rates, what else? Economic trends, etc. Okay? So if you price your home too high, then it will limit the potential amount of buyers who are going to visit it. However, if you price the home low to increase buyers' interest, you may not get the price you want. So pricing it correctly is huge. And going back to pricing a home lower, I'm going to do another episode on strictly offer dates and how they work and methods that you should use, because in hot markets, offer dates are being used all the time. And I think that's going to be a great separate episode to get into. Sometimes we deal with certain sellers who don't want the headache of the selling process. And when I say the headache of the selling process, they just say, Mark, look, I'm paying you to do a job. That means I trust you, and I want you to take the key and go A to Z with this thing, from the marketing to everything that's involved in it. It's your baby. Come back to me when you got an offer for me. And I'll be honest, these are the best to work with. These clients that put the trust in us and allow us to make the best decision that is going to favor them are the clients who are going to do the best, okay? Our job is to sell a home for the highest offer and sell it for as fast as possible. Those are the key ingredients to a successful sale. And doing that just becomes easier when the sellers put all of their trust in you. Now, there's a flip side to this whole situation. There are clients and sellers who want to be actively involved in every small, fine detail of selling their home. And hey, it's their home. They have the choice to do so. But when it gets to a certain point that a seller literally just wants to control the entire listing, I sit there and say, why are you paying me for? Put a for sale by owner sign on your lot and sell the house yourself. You're paying me this kind of money. Let me do what I gotta do. The one thing that a seller should not dictate on is price. When it comes to sellers, they are determined in setting a high price for their home. It'll simply just sit, collect dust, waste money, time, aggravation. Nobody wants any part of that. Being fixated on a particular price for your home will just cost you money in the long run. So again, this comes back to pricing and working together with your realtor. In that case, it is important to know when to walk away from a deal, or a listing if you want to call it. There are multiple instances in which I've lost more money than I made trying to market an overpriced home, and it was just sitting there collecting dust. So I'm going to give you guys an example. There's actually two examples I'm going to give you that happened to me this year. These are both listings that I walked away from. And I'm going to be honest, between both listings, I've put in roughly about $24,000 to $25,000. So it's a tough pill to swallow to sit there and say, cut my losses, but sometimes cutting your losses is actually a gain. Now, one of these listings that I walked away from was back in February. I knew the house wasn't selling for what it was, what we were asking for. I was asking the homeowners to give me a price change. They said, Mark, I can't do it. I'm not dropping the price. So I walked away from it, and they wanted to continue working with me. And that's a listing, and I don't wish people to have their listings stay stale and not sell. But that listing right now, we're in the end of October, and that listing's still on the market. So imagine, I would have had to work that listing for March, April, May, June, July, August, September, October. 8 months further conversations, further headaches dealing with the client, and utter disappointment at the end of the day. So the fact that I lost X amount of dollars on that deal, I can sit there and say, I guess it was worth it for me because I didn't have to deal with all those issues. And for me, time is of the essence. Like, my time is more valuable than any commission check at the end of the day. Because if I'm wasting time on a listing, that means I'm taking away from what I can do with other clients and that's going to affect my ability to service other people. So that time there, I had to walk away from that deal. And again, another recent one that I had, it was on the market. Whether or not we were going to continue was going to be based on the fact that I needed a price change. I knew the property wasn't worth it. And again, I invested into that property about $15,000. It wasn't fun saying, okay, cut my losses $15K, but I just rather not expose myself. It'll make you look like a bad realtor at the end of the day if your property's sitting. It's not beneficial for your clients to have a house sitting, so you might as well just give that job to somebody else, walk away, cut your losses, and call it a day. And I think it's very important because it's easy to have a sour taste in your mouth, as a realtor and as a seller when you're parting ways. And I think it's very important to keep a professional attitude towards it. Both clients that I walked away from, I thanked them for the opportunity. I was very happy to have that opportunity to try to sell the home. It was unfortunate that we weren't able to get the results that we were looking for, but I left things off on a great note. I don't like to burn bridges with anybody because it may not be this property, but it may be another property in the future. So always be clear to stay professional with your clients or your ex-clients in these cases, because professionalism is the number one thing that you need to maintain in this industry. Now, what personally makes it easier for me is before I sign a listing with the seller, I try to be on the same page. If you're not on the same page, guess what? It's going to start off on a rocky road. And I like being in the ocean when it's nice and flat and you can chill and kick your feet up and lie down and get a tan. I don't like when there's waves and I get motion sickness. So, sorry about that example. It's just what I'm thinking about. So you have to ask as many questions as possible. You need to understand what the seller's expectations are for their home. And I know that sellers turn to me and say, well, Mark, I'm bringing you in here to give me a quote. That's fine, I'll give you a quote. But I need to know what your expectations are, because I can give you any quote. If you have a false expectation, there's probably no point of just wasting each other's time here. So at this point, you can understand what the viewpoints are from the seller selling the home, and you can explain you can explain your plan to the clients, because everything's a game plan. You're not just walking into a listing presentation saying, well, I think your home is worth X. Do you want to sell? You have to execute and tell them what you plan on doing, and this is why you're charging what you're charging, and what kind of expectations you plan to have when selling the home for the price. You have to help them clearly understand the strengths and the weaknesses of their properties so they understand where your valuation is coming from. And you obviously want to explain it to them in their favor. You have their best interests at heart. So you just want to play it straight for them. Let them see the truth in your eyes and in your voice when you're speaking to them. You need to explain to your clients clearly what you need from them and what your expectations are from them to avoid future misunderstandings. As a realtor, I rather sell a home than leave a listing. I never have a listing I go into to expect, well, I'm just taking this as a listing to springboard other listings. If I'm listing your house, I want to sell your property. So I think the way that we should kind of sign off with this is I'll give you another example. I hope, as always, that this podcast was informational for you. And this podcast was designed for sellers and realtors alike. Look, at the end of the day, we're all on the same team. When we're working with a seller or seller's working with a realtor, we all have one common goal. That common goal is to sell a property for as much money as possible in the least amount of time. And I think setting clear boundaries and understandings and putting everybody on the same playing field with the same game plan will allow you to be successful. So I want to thank you guys again for tuning into this podcast. This is a topic that I've wanted to discuss for a while because I think it's very important. When you're talking about selling a home, expectations, sometimes get shadowed by an expectation of what a seller wants. At the end of the day, we want to sell properties for as much as we can, but it's very important to define and clearly understand what you're doing with this property, okay? It's very important for people to know, and realtors in general and sellers, that you have to be setting prices exactly where you believe they're worth, especially in a hot market. Markets will always dictate, and the market will speak to you for what something is worth. Our job is to put it in the best position that we can through our marketing and our social media and our negotiation and everything that comes together to making a home stand out in the market. So if you enjoyed this podcast, do me a favor, why don't you hit that subscribe button down below, like and follow us on all of our other social media platforms. I hope that this provided value for you. This is why I continue to do these podcasts. And as always, I want your feedback. So please, if you have any questions pertaining to this podcast or episode or any other podcast or episodes, feel free to contact me on any of my personal information, or better yet, comment down below and I would be happy to reply to you guys. As always, thank you very much for tuning in. Your time is very important to me, and the fact that you commit your time to watching these videos to give you information on becoming a better realtor or just an entrepreneur in general means the world to me. So thank you guys very much, and I'll see you guys on the next episode of Real Talk with Mark Salerno.